I'm going to talk about Cpctc today. And as you can see, it's just an acronym to say that corresponding parts of congruent triangles are congruent. Now, what does that exactly mean, though, for us? Do this and get rid of that. And really, what it means is, if you have these two triangles, or any two triangles, it's telling you that if you know they're congruent, you know that all their corresponding parts, their corresponding pieces, the matching parts, as you can see there, are also going to be congruent. Now, I'm a picture person, so I like to take that and put it into this format. So basically, I'm saying this. If I know that these two triangles are congruent, that's what I'm saying right here. So if I know those two triangles are congruent, then what I'm going to know about those two triangles is that all those corresponding pieces are congruent. I know that segment QR is going to be congruent to segment TU. I know that angle Q is going to be congruent to angle T, and so on. So if the triangles are congruent, you can then say that those 6 corresponding parts are also going to be congruent. So I come to a problem like this. And I first look at these two triangles, and it says, well, which congruence theorem or postulate states that they have to be congruent? Well, I look at my first one and I go, well, I have an angle, a side, and an angle that match up or are congruent to an angle, side, and an angle on the triangle on the right. Well, therefore, I'm going to know that these two triangles, yes, they're going to be congruent using the ASA congruence theorem or postulate. So we know that. Now, I come here to part 2. Well, since these triangles are congruent, what are the other pieces that are going to be congruent? Because using our Cpctc tells us that if the triangles are congruent, the corresponding pieces are going to be congruent. Well, I'm going to start with angles first. I'm going to know that this angle here is going to have to be congruent to this one. And then this side, and the way I'm going to figure this out, I noticed that the side I just marked is the side between the double arc and the triple arc angle. Come over to my other triangle and find the double arc and the triple arc. It's going to have to be here. And then I have my last set of sides. Those will have to be congruent. So everything in blue I'm able to figure out after I know the triangles are congruent. So remember, the blue I only knew because the triangles are congruent. I would not be able to state that until I knew that. Then I'm going to look at one proof. What I'm going to do in this one, I'm going to look at this in the 2-column format, and then I also have already completed this one using a flow proof, and I'll show it at the very end. Now, I'm going to go through my 5 steps. Step 1, this is the one we get to skip a lot of times, state the theorem or conjecture we're trying to prove. I don't have that, so I'm not going to write it down. Step 2, state the given. Well, here it is. Given information, it's all up there. Step 3, draw the picture and mark it up. And I'm gonna hold off on step 3 because I want to first go to step 4, which is to state what you're trying to prove. That's here. So I'm going to keep that in the back of my mind as I'm trying to prove that in my picture. Now I'm just going to put little stars by those pieces to help me remember that that's where I'm trying to get to. So I'm trying to prove that segment KH is congruent to segment LJ. That's where I'm trying to get. Now I look here and I have 2 triangles. So my thought process first says, well, if I could somehow prove that triangle that's up on top is congruent to the triangle on the bottom, I would then know that those 2 corresponding pieces or corresponding sides of the triangles will be congruent. So my first goal is to prove the triangles are congruent. Now, getting back into marking out my picture, it tells me that segment KH and segment LJ are parallel. I'm going to mark that with the little arrow symbols. It also tells me that segment HL bisects segment KJ. Well, if it bisects it at point M, that means that this segment and this segment are going to have to be congruent. Now so I use that in blue. Now I'm going to go to pieces that I can come up with based off of the given information. Well, I go back to if lines are parallel, and then I'm going to go with cut by a transversal, so I'm going to have this be my transversal to start. Well, if they're cut by a transversal, then alternate interior angles are going to be parallel. So I'm going to know that this angle and this angle will be congruent. Now, I still have those 2 same parallel segments. I'm going to now this time have this be my transversal, and if that's my transversal, I can again go with, well, if lines are parallel, then alternate interior angles are congruent, and I would have that. So now I look at this picture, and I have this top triangle where I have an angle, and a side, and in my bottom triangle I have an angle, and a side. That single tick is opposite the single arc, single tick opposite the single arc. I know then in my head, using AAS, the triangles are going to be congruent. Well, if the triangles are congruent, then the corresponding sides have to be congruent, which is going to tell me what I was trying to get to. So right now I've proven this kind of in my head and with the picture. Now it's just time to write that formal proof. So I told you this one I would do a 2-column proof, and on the next slide I'll show you the flow proof that I already have done. So my statements are going to go here. My reasons over here. I'm going to start off with number 1, which is just going to be this. I'm going to do a little cheating here. I'm going to do a little cut and paste or copy and paste. My reason for that is given. And being it's a given reason, I don't have any reference numbers. I didn't need to know anything to be able to say that. Now I'm going to continue on. Because I knew that those lines are parallel, I'm going to go with the things that I was able to figure out because of that. So step 2, remember I said that I'm going to go to the single arcs. Angle H and angle L are going to be congruent. So angle H is going to be congruent to angle L. And remember my reason was if lines are parallel, then the alternate interior angles will be congruent. Now my reference number here, well, I needed to know the lines are parallel. That comes from statement 1. If I don't have the parallel lines, I wouldn't be able to say that the alternate interior angles are congruent. So my reference number is 1. Now in statement 3, I'm going to go to my double ticks. So angle K and angle J are going to be congruent. Whoops, I guess this is statement 3, isn't it? I just said angle K will be congruent to angle J. That's because of all of this. Let's see if I can clone that one. Wonderful. And then I'm going to have to spend all my time writing. All I have to do is change this to reason 3. And again, my reference number comes from the parallel lines, which was in statement 1. So far I have the angles, proven congruent in my actual proof. Next I'm going to go to my blue ticks, the single blue ticks. But I can't say that these are congruent yet, because the reason I knew they were congruent was because segment HL, because of this. I'm going to need more than that. Oh, I'm struggling here. I'm sorry. I need all this. Oh, maybe not. Maybe I'll just write it. So segment HL is going to bisect segment KJ. So segment HL bisects segment KL at M. My reason for that, well, that was given information. And now in statement 5 I can say that those two little segments are going to be congruent. I'm going to come back up here so I get it right. So I have segment KM and segment JM. So segment KM will be congruent to segment JM. And my reason for that is your definition of a midpoint. Abbreviate this. Now I need a reference number. I wouldn't be able to say those segments are congruent unless I had a midpoint, or talked about a midpoint, and I did that in number 4. Now I can say that those triangles are congruent. Come up here and I'm going to have triangle KHM and triangle LJM. 6 is going to be triangle KHM KM is congruent to triangle LJM. I just want to make sure that I put that in the right order. So I have triangle KHM, and then, oh, nope, I did that wrong. It would be triangle JLM. That's what I wanted to make sure, so that's wrong, don't do that. And then my reason for that, well, I wanted to have this be a pretty color. I guess it changed it on me. Let's switch that to be this pretty color of purple. Wonderful. And then my reason, like I said, was angle, angle, side. Well, I needed reference numbers, and for these I just go back, well, my first part of the reason was A, which tells me I have a pair of congruent angles somewhere. Well, that came from statement 2. A, again, another pair of congruent angles, came from 3, and then S, a pair of congruent sides, which was from 5, and there are my reference numbers. And then the last thing I need to do is state what we're trying to prove, because now that the triangles are congruent, my corresponding pieces of those triangles will be congruent. So I can say that segment KH and segment LJ are going to be congruent. Segment KH is congruent to segment LJ, and my reason, Cpctc. Corresponding parts of congruent triangles are congruent. My reference number, well, I needed to have those congruent triangles. That came from step 6. So there's my proof, 7 steps. Based off of the given information and what we were trying to prove. Now, like I said, I did this as a 2-column proof as well. I did it as a flow proof as well. And that flow proof I have right here. It's all the same given, same proof, same picture, nothing changed. I just put it in terms of a flow proof. Now notice, there's still 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 statements and reasons. And if you go through these and compare them, all the statements and all the reasons are identical. It's just put into a different format. Your reference numbers, these are the reference numbers from the 2-column proof. There they are. They're just in form of what's connected. So that's going to conclude my lesson on Cpctc. Hope it helps. If you have any questions, please let me know.